Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mandeline. It's great to see everybody here. I see so many familiar faces from the sessions we've been having, and that makes me happy because I love to extend the conversations. You know, we are here today to talk about accelerated learning approaches, about adult dual enrollment. Again, this is a webinar follow-up from our Accelerated Learning Approaches series. We designed this webinar series in response to participant interest in learning more about programs that are implementing different approaches, in this case, adult dual enrollment, so that we can see how people are lifting up the different flavors of approaches. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to listen to our panelists, after which we will go into breakout rooms where we can engage with panelists and each other in deeper inquiry, and of course, share our own experiences as well. Now, I'll do some quick introductions. I'm here with my colleague, Greg Hill from WestEd. We are having the pleasure of helping to provide technical assistance and support to the adult education field through our work with CAPE. Again, I'm Lisa Lefevre. I'm a senior program associate at WestEd, and I'm joined by my colleague, whom I'll let introduce himself. Greg.
Thanks, Lisa. Really great to be here and love that you see so many folks continuing to be invested in this acceleration strategy. My name is Greg Hill Jr. I'm a senior research associate at WestEd, where I work predominantly in the area of adult ed, post-secondary pathways, as well as data visualization, things like that. We also have Margaret here too. I don't know if Margaret, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. I'm with WestEd as a operations coordinator and happy to help support the CAPE team. Thank you.
Wonderful. And of course, I would really like to take a moment to thank everybody who's been involved in making these webinars function so great. You know, to the CAPE team, to Myra Diaz and Cora Rainey and the CDE team, Dr. Carolyn Zachary, Diana Batista, Neil Kelly, who have always showed their support for this type of work. I don't know if anybody's in attendance today to say hi, but I'll take a quick second's pause.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Happy to be here. And thank you all for joining us this lovely Wednesday afternoon.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I see a hello from Neil. And of course, you know, many thanks to SCOE TAP team, Myra, Madden Lee, Holly, to everybody. You always make this so smooth and possible for us. So we're very, very appreciative. Now I'm going to pass it over to Greg to just sort of review the agenda and some of our session and goals.
Thanks, Lisa. So our agenda, I can go to the next slide too. We could. Our agenda, back one. Our agenda today is pretty slim, primarily because we want to make sure that there is sufficient time for our panelists to share their expertise and for you to be able to engage with them in direct one-to-one conversations in groups. So we have 5 topics really. We're going to begin with our welcome, which is where we're at now. We'll talk a little bit about what dual enrollment is. We'll hear from Uta and Crystal about the programs that they successfully implemented, and then we're going to move into breakout rooms. We're going to do this twice. So one breakout room will feature Uta, the other will feature Crystal, and after I think 10 minutes. They're going to swap. And so just to ensure that everybody gets a chance to engage with Crystal and Uta respectively. And then we'll come back together and close things out. If there's time, share some key lessons or whatnot. Excellent. And so next slide. Our session goals, of course, are to identify strategies for delivering, implementing, and sustaining dual enrollment, and of course, to share and learn from colleagues in the field, and that includes panelists as well as those of you who are on the call who have, engaged in some furtive efforts or perhaps even successfully implemented them. And likewise, we have folks who have long history with adult ed. Neil, I'm thinking about you. You probably have a lot to contribute here too. Okay. Next slide, please. So if you're here, you probably already know more or less what dual enrollment is, right? But just to be clear, adult dual enrollment allows adult learners who are in high school diploma programs, high school diploma, GED, HSE, to enroll in community college or college courses. There are myriad benefits to this, as has been shown in really, I think, probably decades of literature on the positive effects of dual enrollment among diverse populations, in fact. But again, so some of the benefits are, to learners is that, of course, it removes the cost of tuition as a barrier. It accelerates their progress toward degrees and diplomas, and actually has a positive effect on matriculation rates as well as persistence. Likewise, it benefits colleges themselves, right? It can increase enrollment and revenue. You should get higher apportionment for it. It can help strengthen ties with community education providers, or i.e. your adult schools, to develop other sorts of pathways. And I think probably most importantly, it helps to promote equity and diversity, both within the classroom and within the student body itself. You can find more about the parameters of adult dual enrollment as it relates to adult dual enrollment through the link here, which Senate Bill SB 554. There are also a few links here. Just as a point of reference, there's no appreciable difference between SB 554 dual enrollment and dual enrollment more broadly. It is, in its simplest expression, what SB 554 is it extends the benefits that were already available to high school students, to adult learners. All right, Lisa, do you want to pick up from here?
I do, and I just wanted to add one thing, which I think Margaret put into the chat, is a new tool, if you will, that has been created for this series. It's the Accelerated Learning Program Development Consideration and Checklist. It goes over the adult dual enrollment too, as well as some of the other approaches we've been talking about in this series. So that has been posted and you can find it. We will be sharing slides after this session in a few weeks. So we will alert everybody to what's out there. So next slide, because we're going to move on now to hear from our guests. Enough about us. I'd love to introduce both Ute Mashka, Director of Continuing Education at Palomar College, and Crystal Robinson, Director of Continuing Education Special Projects at Southwestern. We'll start with the panel format where we're going to have some initial questions. Again, feel free to chat yours, and then we will be moving into breakout rooms where we can interact more fully with each other and share our experiences. So again, welcome to our panelists. And Mandalee, if we can advance to the next slide, I have a few key highlights for each of our panelists today as we talk. And I will start with the first question. Ute, I'm going to start with you. Could you please just tell us a little bit about your adult dual enrollment approach and what compelled you to adult dual enrollment?
Yes. Hello, everyone. There are quite some experts in the room already, so I feel like, why am I on this panel and not the others? But thank you. Let me start with the second part first. What attracted us? Why is this so compelling? Well, it's an equity lever, right? Absolutely. This is our chance for adult learners to shine and to support them in having access to college where they didn't have access before at the credit level. So it is a unique opportunity for our adult school students to have their voice heard. It also introduces college populations, faculty to adult learners with whom we work more at the K-12 adult school. The other one that attracted us to it is that it's a catalyst. SB 554 is a catalyst for other conversations, right? How do we align across systems? How do we facilitate pathways for students? Because in the end, the student really doesn't care about all the institutional guidelines workflow, etc., that we put in place for good and sometimes not so good results. The approach then for us has always been student voice first, right? What is it that benefits the student in this approach? So understanding their needs, their goals, their concern has for us always had to come first. And then from there, design a version of adult dual enrollment that works for each of our students, right? So that required for us, let's put a designated person in place first. That designated person in charge, then being in charge of collecting data from students, setting up initial conversations with students, and then also moving forward the conversation with stakeholders that need to be part of this journey to support our students. So that then those stakeholders have to be also champions on both sides, right? At the adult school and at the colleges. In the first experience with implementing, it had to be, what took us the longest was identifying champions at a college district, and getting all the necessary pieces in place for that. Hand it over to Crystal.
Yeah, and thank you, Uta. I really love, I put it's a fantastic mantra, student voice first. And I will have more questions on that data collection piece, so important. Crystal.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here to speak to you about our experience in the South Bay Adult Ed Consortium, Southwestern College. Previously, I was the consortium lead, and so that's how we got started with this. Now I'm the director of continuing ed at Southwestern College, and just getting to see kind of both sides of the dual enrollment experience, it continues to be eye-opening to me. I'm always learning new things about it. Our approach, we started several years ago. It was at a point where our consortium was trying to define what transition means for our students. What is the role of non-credit in our consortium? What is the role of credit in our consortium? What groups of students should we focus on for transition? Which students do we think are ready, which are not ready? All of those things were in place, and we decided that we would do just a pilot project to focus on transition to help us answer these questions, because really we were going round and round and still not having clear answers. So we decided we needed to actually just go in and do it. So good thing we did have the guidance of SB 554. And even choosing that was a little bit of a challenge too. Some thought that we should focus on, for example, ESL students, because most of our students are ESL, or we should focus on career training students because those are articulated. And I mean, we could have done anything really, but we focused on this, and we didn't have the champions all around, as Uta had mentioned. That absolutely is necessary. But we did have the leverage of having an official pilot project through the college. So that kind of helps in that sense. And absolutely, it really brought to light a lot of information that we didn't realize. One thing is, talking about equity, we hadn't realized how many students already had degrees. Students in the high school diploma or equivalency programs with degrees already. And what the students would actually choose to take on the credit side, the classes that they chose, it was really, every single student had a different goal. We couldn't say, this group of students would be going into this pathway. It really was we really did focus on the student voice, as Uta mentioned. And probably the biggest thing was we learned after the pilot that we needed to call it what the college called it, because the college called it adult school special. And we didn't realize that until after the pilot. So we were kind of talking about the same thing, but using different terminology, which doesn't really help out in the beginning. So just a lot to learn from there.
Yeah, Crystal, I really appreciate you sharing the learning involved too along these steps, right? So I hear themes from both of the student, understanding the student, tailoring to the student, meeting the students where they're at and their needs and hearing from them as important, as well as, intentionally doing so, planning, not just jumping into things, but piloting them when you're ready and then looking back and, collecting data. That's one of our next question is like that intentionality around tracking and data. What do you do to think about continuous improvement, to understand what is working, what might be different, where you need to norm, what it's called for students. So for example, and I can open it up to both.
It's a really good question, how we track and measure. It's not getting easier to answer it, despite the fact that we implemented this in 2020. I want to pick up on something Crystal just said, that refers to data, right? So that most students are on very unique tracks. We can't really say this cohort goes into this, which, by the way, makes it really different from dual enrollment with the high schools.
Yes.
The data tracking or the initial conversations with the students also sort of introduced a need for us to become more humble again, because we have certain assumptions about our students based on data analysis and demographics, right? But some of our assumptions, we just need to let go of, right? Students tell us, yeah, I need to learn English, but that's also because they are not informed enough about other options they have, right? So this SB 554 was also an opportunity for us to reconsider how we present options and how we support students in navigating these options and making informed decisions, right? So collecting data then of course, we did another spreadsheet to begin with, right? To collect these data points that the more traditional demographics and all CCC apply or any of these tools don't really catch. What's happening in the students' lives, right? What is their background? And not just a degree, although that is important, but what other prior experience can they bring into this, right? So for collecting this, we created a gigantic spreadsheet because we didn't have any other tool we could use for that. So the student information system, the CRMs didn't have access to that. So this tracking then allowed us to also introduce other data points, for example, services the student needs, services that the student benefits from to truly accelerate in this special admittance program. Learning when do students drop out or need to drop out, right? So which courses don't work for them. Finding out which combination of courses work best for them. So those are the data points we're tracking that are a little bit not the traditional. But those data points help us improving this program consistently, right? So that when we have the initial intake with students, we are now in a position to sort of make recommendations based on experiences we collected over the last 3-4 years, right? Creating a digital workflow for all of this is crucial. We're not there yet. that requires a lot of goodwill and some budget from both sides, right? But to track intake, to track onboarding, to track persistence and completion, and being able to respond just in time when something quote unquote doesn't go well will be crucial for the future success of this. I mentioned, some of you have heard me saying this before, but the most important thing for us is to track data between milestones, right? So usually we consider this pathway, there are these benchmarks or milestones, we measure those, persistence, completion, a grade for a course. That's all important, but the interesting thing is really what happens between those points for our adult learners.
Thank you so much, Ute. Crystal.
Yes, our spreadsheet was modeled after Uta's spreadsheet. What would we do without it? I don't know. Yeah, and I would just reiterate again that understanding the process on the college side is crucial because the special admit process requires someone in the college to admit the student. So since we are just dealing with spreadsheets, it's not any kind of automated process. If that person is out and misses the spreadsheet or misses the notification, then the student doesn't get in. So it's a lot of back and forth and making sure that we're hitting all of these processes as they come up and we're ahead of it, we're anticipating, which requires lots and lots of communication going back and forth. And I'm hoping we can have some sort of system in the near future where we can just, log in and we're both seeing the same information as opposed to having to send information back and forth, which can get lost.
Yeah, I hear you, Crystal. And I before I go on to the next question, I think that this has been generating a lot of other questions from our audience. So Greg, I didn't know if you wanted to raise one, and then I saw one from Lisa because it dovetails nicely into what you're both talking about right now.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think Myra, I may have pretty well answered it, but the one question that came through to me, but Lisa at NOCE asks, what are some examples of services students need to succeed in ADE? And also, I have a subsequent question about who you engaged when it was all said and done. How many people did you have to talk to make it work? But I think paramount is Lisa's question.
Right. And Lisa's question is really touching upon that question of success. What makes, we had the question of success for the approach, but ultimately for the student.
So some of it is what you already can think of, right? So support with childcare, support with transportation, but then support with textbooks, etc. Some of the sort of maybe not immediately coming to mind is about scholarships available, right? So supporting this, supporting the student in learning how to apply for scholarships so that they can afford living costs aside, time management skills, right? So plugging in time management tools, or just having sort of a mini workshop with 1 or 2 or 3 students on how to manage time now that they are a college student. How to communicate with a professor, how to communicate with college services. So those were support structures. We sort of had a hunch that we needed those, but we hadn't really intentionally thought about those. So we plugged those in, that students now can pick up additional skills on the fly. right?
This seems like one of these really excellent examples of uh, how adult ed can be really adaptive to student needs. And so I just love that the instant you started to see this as a trend and a need, you could create workshops with them and help prepare them better for how to engage successfully.
Right. I mean, and then there are also navigational skills, right? So how do I navigate government systems, educational systems, legal systems, right? Linda just put it in the chat, right? This is why this is such an awesome equity lever. It serves our undocumented students, right? This is the way towards collecting enough hours toward residency status. It's the tool to introduce undocumented students to other opportunities available to them. And it allows conversations that sometimes don't happen elsewhere, right? About the legal system, about free legal help that students can get at community college campuses, not so much at adult schools, because we usually don't have those resources at adult schools. Yeah, so to Linda's point, right? This is the way for undocumented students to have access to college courses, no tuition.
Right.
I don't know if this is sort of probably leading into the next question, but in addition to tuition, there are of course other fees to consider, right? So one, which is partially a navigational skill for the students, how do I make sure I can pay material fees? But it's also one for us where we now had to consider, what about the college health fees? What about student center fees? What about parking fees? Right? So there are other conversations to be had to make it a truly free program for our students.
And it's Ute and Crystal, looking at the chat that's going on, people are thinking about all of these, how to make it successful all around to meet the various needs that are out there. Because you're right, it's not a one model thing. Everybody has a confluence of service needs to be successful that dual enrollment can touch. And Crystal, I wanted to also hear from you, but add, like you were doing, Ute, that last question there. It's, if you could change one thing, what makes things successful? But if you could also change one thing, what would it be to make it even more so?
Oh boy, where do I start? So this is a recorded session. So
Yeah.
So to me, it is at this point in time still important to pay attention to semantics, I think. This is adult dual enrollment. And I would push back if the college says this is special adult, or what Crystal said. And it's important for all of us to understand the differences between high school dual enrollment processes and adult school dual enrollment processes, despite, as Greg pointed out, that they are under the same umbrella. So if I did it again, I would emphasize even more that this is adult dual enrollment. Because for many of us at the community colleges, the association is immediately, oh, this is like high school, it's utterly complicated. No, we don't have the bandwidth to deal with this, right? So taking that anxiety away, right away. The other aspect is perhaps, for me, would be to find a way for a digital electronic process right away. Right? We created, I think out of necessity, a lot of extra work for staff that's usually overextended already, right? This is all going through email. This is all, sometimes these are PDF files, forms that have their own challenges. So it's a lot of extra work. Those gigantic spreadsheets are extra work. So insisting on a digital workflow right away, I would probably do in this, or as a matter of fact, I'm doing now in the second iteration of implementation.
Yeah, I agree completely. At some point we figured out that, even though this is adult dual enrollment and it's extremely different, we needed to just kind of compare and contrast for the college in particular, because they are working with high school special, as they call it at Southwestern, and adult school special. So they have a whole complete process down packed for high school special. So we just figured out, like, okay, let's start with that and then tweak it to make it fit to adult ed, because just what we were attempting to do is just create something from the beginning that's a heavy lift. So even still, the numbers, and I want to point out the numbers on my side. The numbers were a challenge also, because the first time that we went through it, we had 3 participants. So it was extremely difficult to convince, everyone involved that we need this whole new procedure in place for 3 students. That was extremely challenging as well. So when Uta says, find the champions, absolutely, because it's going to take people with vision and persistence and just iteration, trying new things, what sticks, because it does work and you're going to increase your enrollment over time. But yeah, just know that if you're just barely starting out, it's going to be a lot of work for a low number in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. So if I may chime in, because in the chat, Sergio is bringing up an excellent point, right? So what we are still, I think, all working on is like try to be as precise and clear as possible. What is what? So adult dual enrollment under SB 554 is different from concurrent enrollment, is different from CCAP. Right?
Yes.
So what it is a special admittance program geared toward adult learners at K-12 adult schools in high school diploma equivalency programs who can take up to 11 units, no tuition, credit level at community colleges. It is the student's choice which courses to pick. They can't do PE. But everything else is really the student's choice. Of course, we want to support them in making an informed choice, right? So some of the courses have prerequisites. They should not be selected. Some of the courses might be too challenging, require some foundations that the student might not have at this point. When the student starts in special admittance, they might not want to take 3 courses all at once, because that's quite a bit of time commitment and time management skill. And the students do that individually. So unlike CCAP, right, it's not one course for one high school class, for example. So the tracking mechanisms are and reporting mechanisms are not as rigid. It's basically on us how much we want to track that, right? It is on us to collect data. SB 554 special admittance also has to be renewed with a new form every semester, right? So unlike CCAP, we really have to renew and go through the whole process every single semester.
So that's really great detail there, Uta. I wanted to also just quickly notice what Cheryl put in chat in her description. One flavor of adult dual enrollment is sort of an exposure model, right? But And this is true both in high school as well. Well, actually, the research is all high school level with regard to this, but there are at least a couple studies that have highlighted the positive effects for more structured pathways for dual enrollment in career-focused education. And so it could absolutely be more focused on exposing students, really getting them excited, really motivating them. But at the same time, it can be more structured, and what the data suggests is actually more structured pathways do yield higher matriculation rates. But so much really depends on who you're serving, right? And I really want to emphasize that piece that both Crystal, you and Uta said about really engaging with students, understanding them, and being there. It's not a conveyor belt. It needs shepherding. Sorry, Uta, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, and matriculation is one thing, right? So I think what is important for us also to look, like that's why I said somewhere, design with the end in mind, right? Matriculation, persistence, completion, and then what, right? So there is an ideal case scenario where a SB 554 student would select college courses that count toward their high school diploma completion, right? That where they can take college credits and make them count toward the adult school's completion, high school diploma completion. They would also knock out either prereqs or general ed courses that help them to then transition into college full-time or part-time, but at the credit and degree level. And they would also choose a course that has an industry recognized certificate credential. So that's possible, right? So that's the ideal case scenario. And I'm bringing this up because that is now leading to the outcomes. We don't measure them though that well. Sometimes it's really impossible to figure it out. But when it works, then I can show that a student who can make those informed choices, the adult, often working learner who makes those informed choices, transitions either directly into college, to a degree program, or into a quote unquote better job, right? And that's the crucial outcome. And I think for we need to become even better at measuring that, right? And this for me is really hinging on student voice and agency.
Yeah.
A student who has made the decision to participate in these courses and is supported by us most likely will transition to a better job or college.
Yeah, Greg has already put it there and said, well said. And this conversation is extremely rich. And it's been so fruitful. I think we're going to bring it into the breakout rooms and then come back together to continue, because this has been so appreciative. We'll take those steps, but keep all your questions going, and we will try, if we have time, to debrief. If not, we will find some way to continue this conversation for sure. So I think Holly is going to put us into rooms. We'll have 10 minutes to continue all the questions that have been posted or more.
Yes. Okay. So I have back.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. This has been beyond rewarding, beyond engaging, and we've been very, very happy to hear from both Ute, from Crystal, and from everybody here and all your experiences. We don't have, as usual, we went over, so we don't have time to debrief, but we are going to continue these conversations. I thank our presenters. You can feel free, Amanda, maybe the next slide, to contact Greg and I, to ask any questions. We can always forward on, and we're here for support. We also want to thank SCOE-TAP. I think they have a valuation, a link, and I will let them talk about that. But please never hesitate to reach out to us. We are here. We will be continuing these conversations, so stay tuned.
All right. Thank you, Wested team and your panelists. I know that it must have been a very rich conversation just hearing what you guys were speaking about prior to going into your breakout rooms. We thank you all for joining us in the middle of the day towards the end. We know it can be a little bit of a push. As Lisa shared, we will have that PowerPoint, and once fully remediated, we will share out with the team here, as well as it will be posted to the website along with the recording. So thank you again for your time. Do take a few moments to fill out the evaluation, as it does help inform us and how we plan our professional development, as well as our presenters and how they share. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.